I'm gonna kick off the first question, but this is where you get to throw questions out from the floor. And I'm going to go to public policy because Jerry, it was interesting listening to you talk about the Helping Working Poor. Valley of the Sun United Way in the 90s actually helped create that. We worked with a representative. That's how it was created. The Helping Working Poor tax credit came out of our role in public policy. It was up for sunset. It's been up 2 other times. We are the only philanthropic group that goes out there to make sure that that tax credit keeps moving forward. So this idea of philanthropy coming together more around public policy is an important one. How are you looking at a public policy agenda, or how are you going to move into the arenas of public policy? And I open that up to the panel.
As far as ourselves, we're really relying on the experts that I mentioned earlier. The Arizona Association for Community Health Centers as a good example. They're on top of the policy. They're going to help us determine, and we're going to look to them to help us to see where the impact could be in the sense of trying to find ways to leverage and other community funding, other public, private funding to make the healthcare net much bigger than what it is today. Because it is big, and it will always be big. As I mentioned earlier, that the 1945 banner at the American Hospital Association cost was, now I wasn't there at that event, I want you to know I'm not that old. But I was there in the early 70s when they were putting that up. Cost of healthcare isn't going to go away as an issue, but we have to find ways to deal with it. And I think today the whole issue of prevention to keep people out of community health centers, figuring out ways with public-private partnerships to keep people out. And I think organizations like the Hospital Association, the American Hospital Association, Grantmakers in Health, looking for ways like the prevention that MD Anderson is thinking about. They're prepared to do something. They can't do it alone without some public partnership activity. So I think that's where we see our role in activity, and hope others will see the same thing.
Steve, Clint?
We have now a separate committee of the board that was established last year, and Jan Lesher, who works at Pima County with Chuck area, is the person on our board running that. And so now it comes in front of the board on a monthly basis as we look at what's happening, public policy issues around the state, but also us then, and we've also a great resource at the Council on Foundations, just look at our evolving role in public policy. That's one. And then the second is we have 3 funding collaboratives, and the most successful one, at least on the public policy front, is in South Tucson because it's involved in a public-private partnership with the mayor's office in South Tucson. And the great thing is we just had a lot of school closures in Tucson, and there was only one area that had no closures because of the policies. And the fact is, for the first time together, South Tucson acted and got ahead of the curve so that no schools in South Tucson were closed.
I think Prop 204 was a wake-up call and an object lesson. No matter how much we invest in program, we will not move the needle. And again, that says doesn't matter the size of the foundation. Program has to be combined with an advocacy strategy. So you need to have programs to demonstrate what you're advocating for with respect to policy, because the real shifts are going to come through policy shifts and the funding that follows. What we can do is catalyze that. I like Clint at the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona and ACF, when we both got here months apart, neither of our boards had public policy committees. And there was a general reluctance to get into the public policy arena. Well, you can't say you want to be a leader and have impact if you're not willing to help influence and educate the community and advocate for the right kinds of public policies, which are then going to leverage your philanthropic giving. And so we have to get rid of whatever it is here that we're fearful about educating the legislature and the community about public policy. We saw in 2004, whatever position you had, we saw something defeated without a plan B for children, absent any factual information on the opposing side that was funded to a great extent by people who didn't want to pay 1 cent sales tax from here and elsewhere in the country. How could that happen? It could happen because there wasn't an opposing force, and not necessarily with money, but with votes, with people who understood what was at stake here, that weren't organized, as Clint said, and mobilized and educated to the extent that we needed to educate them to know what the downside was of what had been happening to funding for education. So it's much cheaper for us as foundations to invest in public policy and advocacy than it is to invest in programs. And you get much more lift for every dollar you give to advocating for a policy set or educating the legislature than you do for every dollar you give to program. It's just much more expensive in program, less expensive to make a difference there. We've got to get better at that as a philanthropic community.
So this is an opportunity for you. I've got more questions, but we want to hear the questions from you. So fire away. Okay, I'm going to ask another question. So what are the biggest threats to the sector right now, to the philanthropic sector? Clint, why don't you grab that one?
Other than public policy?
Yeah, other than public policy.
No, because it is. It's huge what's happening both at the national level and the local level, and the state level. It threatens everything that we do. So realizing that's number one. Then the second, I would say a couple of them. One for us is just on the make a difference side. It is on that moving a needle and making a difference and proving to those that are investing us and are thinking about partnering with the difference that we're making. And simply saying I reached 5 more kids this year is not making a difference. And so when our detractors find out that kind of stuff, they use it against us. But the great thing is the data is out there and we can begin to do that. And I think a big threat, we need to use that data to improve practice. Jerry?
Obviously, as you mentioned, public policy is certainly number one. Number two, I think sustainability of the nonprofits that are out there is paramount. And I think one of the things that the AGF AGF and the Alliance with the Arizona Gives Day, we asked ourselves, why not try something like that in Arizona? If Minnesota is in their fourth year, raised 16.5 million. Why can Minnesota do that? Why can't Arizona do the same thing? And that money goes right to the nonprofits. And I think it's rallying the public, the community. The community is willing to give, and they just need to know where to give and how to give. And I don't think we've done a good enough job of helping our nonprofits get out there and get the public educated. Because once the public's educated, do more fundraising within industry, more employee fundraising drives and this type of thing. I don't think it'll hamper the other programs that exist today, because I think people are willing to give, and it's a matter of generating that. And this, what I mentioned earlier, this working poor tax credit, I didn't realize Allison was involved in it. It's a great program. It's an incredible program because it doesn't cost the donor a dime. And
therefore may not be philanthropy, but that's
yeah,
I mean, right?
But it's a source of money. It's a source of funding.
It's a source of
that is
generosity,
there.
it's not a source of philanthropy, but that's an
Yeah.
intellectual argument we can
But
have.
it's leverage.
I mean, it's not.
It's leverage.
But
It's
it's
leverage.
leverage. It's money
It's
out
a-
there that is left on
Right.
the table, and so many people are confused, because I talk about, oh, I already give. You mean to the school, right?
Yeah.
Yep, to the school. They don't seem to know about the working poor tax credit. And the amount of money that can be raised, I mean, Family Promise is a good example, Bob, of doubling your money. And just going to the churches that support Family Promise. It's just another source. Is it the answer? No. It's just one small little bit of getting out there and getting the public educated. I think Arizona Give Day, if done properly and effectively, it will do a huge lift to nonprofits. Again, another way to do it, not the answer, but one more way. It's just these building blocks that we need to constantly work on to build.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I wanted to speak to this out of another, is this working?
No.
No.
Did I push a button?
I don't know.
I got too excited and pushed the
You want
button.
to answer the
I
Gates
don't-
question?
I don't know how to work these things.
You're fine without it.
Push it, project. The other challenge I think we have is if you've recently looked at the demographic data for Arizona and following the whole national debate, I mean, here you've got four old white guys in green. And if this panel continues to look like us, we got a real problem, because that's not who we need to be. No offense to my colleagues. But, you know, by 2030, if you look at the data, we will be a majority Latino state. And so we need to think now. So from an ACF perspective, if 99% of our donors are white and old, look at the numbers. They're going to be gone in a few years. And I have to think, because we're in the business of perpetuity, we're a vehicle for people to give. How are we reaching out to the Latino community, the Asian community, other communities, African American community, to engage them in philanthropy as we have been so successful with wealthy white people? And so we will, if we don't do that, be a total failure to this community as a vehicle for enabling people to give back. And if we don't reach that community today, 20 years from now, when wealth is being generated in that community, we'll have made a huge, huge mistake, and the numbers are clear. So what are we doing? Thanks to Belen and others, we have Latinos Unidos, which is drawn from the Hispanics in philanthropy. We had 130 people here, leaders in the Latino community, the other night that Tony Benegas had arranged, and the Leadership Council at Latinos Unidos. We have a Black Philanthropy Initiative. We've got to do a lot more of this, because anybody can engage in philanthropy, and we've got to make those efforts to ensure this community, as it grows and changes, is part of what we do and understands what philanthropy is and what a community foundation or any type of foundation, whether it's a family foundation, is available to them as well for their giving.
And I would offer the leadership at the board level has to reflect that as well.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure, and this will be the final question.
Thank you.
You're not allowed to ask me questions. You work here. He's the provocateur.
How do we also encourage that a more diverse community be involved in the decision-making in the philanthropy as well, both staff positions as well as, you know, other committees, boards, is where I was going with that, as to how the grants and funding is distributed to the communities that they live in, and not just as donors to those organizations.
She asked a question. I'll answer that.
No, but it's, we did that at I worked at Chicago Community Trust, and we had we had an African American, Latino, and everything. initiatives, but a lot of it was to place people on the board. This Chicago Community Trust Board really reflects the community. But then there were also youth initiatives within that, where there was a board training component, where these people were program officers and then moved into kind of a junior board steering level. So that then they had that practicing experience and then went on to work at other foundations throughout Chicago.
Nice.
Right, and I think to add to that, and I think there's more that we can do, you know, donors like Bill Gates, and Bill Gates is no different than anybody else. He just has a lot of zeros. So he doesn't have to meet with Diane Ravitch if he doesn't want to. There's no requirement. He doesn't owe her anything. He doesn't owe anybody anything, no more than anybody who sets up a private foundation does. It's his money, he earned it, and he's making the choice to give it back, just like Virginia Piper, just like Pat Miles, just like everybody else. And so you have a right to do what you want with your money in this country. Now, I think, though, as a community foundation and community philanthropy, we populate our philanthropic services committees, in fact, almost all of our committees, with external members from the community. Our education subcommittees are representative people from the community as well as board members. So almost every committee of the board at ACF, and I'm sure at Community Foundation Southern Arizona, have community members who are making decisions with our board members on the direction of funds and philanthropy. We have to always reserve the right for donors to give where they want based on their values and their needs and their sense of the community. So I think there'll always be that place where an individual donor to direct as they, or advise, as we have to say, what they think is most important after all. But when we have discretionary money, it is important to engage the community, so we're really smart about what the community sees their needs are, and any ways we can advise that kind of giving, I think, is going to be important going forward.
Well, that, I think we're at the end of our time, so let's give a